certain times, you've seen a lot of clients really need to step back and look at their business structures. Often they evolve over time. There's often not a lot of thought goes into it because they had an opportunity, they buy a business in. But often that, you know, where the value sits in that business, it can be not always in the trade, but often in properties. We've had that instance recently where the trade wasn't doing so well, but the client had that huge property portfolio of commercial units sitting on the side.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a great opportunity for some of our clients, isn't it? The ability to move that around. If what you've got isn't perfect for your scenario now, we can do something a bit different. It might be that we need to pull a bit of a more structure around it, where we've not got everything all in one pot, where it's subject to all the problems that might come with that.
Or it's an opportunity for a creditor to take an angle on you. Yeah.
Can have a go. We can do something a bit different, can't we? Move it up into a bit of group structure, or if we want to go a bit further, we might pull it apart, mightn't we, into something completely different.
Yeah.
So we've got two different scenarios, which we've seen recently.
Yeah, demerger is something we're doing an awful lot of, and I think going into times of more uncertainty, looking at that value, how can you segregate it into separate legal entities that are ring-fenced, but obviously not getting a big tax bill in the process.
Exactly. So we know that as you go through this kind of process, people are thinking about, well, I've got a nice big gain on that property, I don't want to be triggering that too much. I've got stamp taxes that I've got to be thinking about, but we've seen various examples where, with the right planning, you can work through those. You get the clearances from HMRC, and off you go. You can continue.
I think also looking at how those assets are valued, you know, obviously the properties, if they're rented, will be valued on a yield basis, but where they're rented to the client's own business, in effect, often, you know, that gets missed as to the true value of those properties. And at the moment, yields that have been a bit delicate in recent times, but they're sort of holding up. And then you look at multiples on earnings, you know, it's a challenging time to sell at the moment. That could be a bit more suppressed. So actually segregating the two, we've seen examples where their overall net worth has actually increased.
Exactly. Yeah, there was an example we were looking at last year, wasn't there, where we were able to pull out a property, and the value that was realised on the business was, you know, a reasonable sum, but it was the property which they held on to longer term, which was fantastic for them. So I think people should be looking out for that. Where can they get a bit more value out by segregating some of their assets into the bits that they really want to hold on to, and the bits that are maybe a bit shorter term.
Yeah, most of these things of course involve a demerger process which is set out in legislation. It's not that quick to do. It takes a while and it needs a bit of planning, and usually tax clearance from HMRC. I think with anything like that, it's about having that time ahead to plan, and typically the directors will need to swear an insolvency statement into the business. So I think that's not to be taken lightly. Therefore, leaving things too late, unfortunately, ties our hands.
I think we've seen that a few times, haven't we? And particularly when we've been trying to restructure things, which is partly, you know, protecting some continuing assets immediately prior to a sale, has been quite a challenge, hasn't it? Where you've been running a process where you're trying to restructure your group and then try and run a sale process immediately afterwards. Being able to plan ahead a bit more is really helpful. You don't have so much of a stress and strain while you're trying to do a whole restructure of your business at the same time as trying to run a sale.
Yeah, because that would typically as well involve the bank to move charges, move group guarantees, and that takes time.
It always does.
Even if we can magic up the tax solution.
Exactly.
Of course, the full demerger, it takes a while, it's quite an expensive exercise, but typically worth it in the end if you're going down that route. There are things we've done recently where we've just involved a holding company in cash. I think that can be very effective in some commercial situations.
For sure. As you say, it's expensive to go through a demerger process. But if all we need to do is protect some cash, for example, being able to put a new holding company in place above your current trading company and hive up the cash only, that gives you freedom to go and invest that outside of your trading business. You can go and invest that in property or whatever your sort of preferred route might be. And I think that can be really valuable.
Yeah, we often find for clients as well, they get a lot of challenge from their customers if they're making too much money, and the questions often posed to us is, how do I hide or conceal the level of profitability? Of course, you can't disguise your accounts if you're having to file full accounts, but using maybe a holding company to transfer cash up to it has some benefits.
For sure. We've seen a number of cases like that recently where times have been good and there's been some strong profits. By putting a holding company above your current trading company, as you say, people will tend to only look at the trading company to try and establish your profitability. This gives you a fantastic opportunity. We can move some of the assets up to a holding company, and it might be that there are certain charges that might be made from a holding company down to the trading company, which might suppress the profitability within the trading company itself, which is what your customers might be seeing. So that's a fantastic opportunity. Of course, the overall profitability for you remains the same. It's all within the same structure, but it gives you the opportunity to avoid having such strong profitability seen to your customers.
I think the other angle often is where businesses have got different boards of directors at trading level, and the main shareholders in the management business might not want them to see the level of cash they're holding and what they're then doing with it. And this gives an opportunity as well as commercially to have that cash moved away from the day-to-day ops directors up to a different board sitting in holdings to look at that.
So we've seen plenty of examples of that recently. It's those different layers of management and the appropriate sort of disclosure information. Sometimes it is much more beneficial to avoid people being distracted by what's happening in the trading company. Move those non-core assets, whether it's excess cash or property, into a holding company. That means that the operations people, they don't need to worry about all that stuff. The shareholder can worry about maximising his or her value there and avoid muddying the waters within the trading company.
Yeah, I think we've also seen that where there's a big cash balance in the trading company, people can get a bit slack around credit control, around spending money on assets and using the company's cash where perhaps it could have been funded in a different way, or a tighter policy would have generated more cash. So I think sometimes there's also a commercial advantage of not, for internal purposes, not letting there be too much cash available to run the business.
That's absolutely right. And of course, if things do get tough, if things do become a bit challenging, you've always got the option to lend some of that money back down to the trading company. So it not only focuses the mind of the operations folks on the ground, it means that you've still got flexibility if you need to lend back down to solve any short-term problems that you might have.
And I think the beauty of the tax rules as they stand is being able to put a holding company structure in place relatively quickly without a tax bill.
That's right. I mean, the tax analysis for this kind of thing is fairly straightforward. We're obviously applying to HMRC for clearance. We want to make sure we're not going to be caught out by some anti-avoidance tax rules that HMRC might apply. But HMRC have got 30 days to respond once you put a tax clearance in. Once HMRC have responded, we can be working with the lawyers to get all the documentation drafted, and you're good to go. There's not too much process around this kind of thing, is there?
It's as simple, really, in terms of structuring.